Hi, I'm Sam, your training guy. Let's talk security. More than ever, today's security is vital for organizations to protect their client files. Data protection is vital to the process of protecting client data from unauthorized access and data corruption. With iChannel security groups, the ISGs allow for security to be set at the modules in iChannel, which would control the files, the contacts, the workflow, routing, request, and systems tabs in the iChannel banner. In addition, iChannel security groups allow for file area permissions, which can be set at the global or the site permissions. Some of the few security features that can be granted to a user are view site, view files, add a document, email files, publish files. In addition, iChannel Security allows for an optional feature where an organization can limit or restrict who has access to a particular folder for files. These are set at the primary or secondary category security levels. Grant the least privileges first. When you create a user privilege, follow the standard security advice of granting least privileges or granting only the permissions required to perform a task. Start with minimum set of permissions and grant additional permissions as necessary. Doing so is more secure than starting with permissions that are too lenient and then trying to tighten them later. You might be asking yourself, where do I start? How many security groups should I create? Should I set global or site permissions? Well, let's discuss. First of all, one of the required security elements is creating a security group. This allows you to grant privileges to the iChannel modules. It also allows you to set file area permissions at either the global or the site permissions. Security groups at the global file area permissions or security groups that are set at the template file area permissions are required when setting up iChannel security. Whether an organization chooses to set at the global level or the template level, your iChannel implementation team or support personnel can easily help you determine the best approach for your organizations. These two security groups, whether it's the global or the template file area permissions, allow you to grant file area privileges for your users to view sites, view files, add documents, email files, or publish files. An optional security group that can be set up is a site file area permission. Grant these one-off individual file area privileges at one of your sites to view site, view file, add documents, email files, or publish files. It is worth noting that the site file area permission allows the organization to override either the template and/or the global area permissions. Again, another optional security group that can be created is the folder area permissions. You grant primary or secondary file folder privileges to allow a user to view one or more folders or restrict one or more folders from the user's view. The folder area permissions allows the organization to override either the site, the template, or the global permission. Let's take a tour on how to set up and assign security groups in iChannel. The first step in the process of creating security in iChannel is to identify the security groups. Remember, security groups grant privileges to iChannel modules. It also allows the organization to set security at the file area permissions, whether that's global or system permissions. It is worth noting that only an iChannel admin can create security groups and assign to users. Click the Systems tab from the banner list. Under the Systems navigation panel, you'll see security groups. Click the security group. Any predefined security groups that have already been created will be listed in the search results. To create a new security group, click on the New Group button located in the top right of the screen. The group name is a requirement when creating a new security group. It should be an easy identifiable name so you can easily assign the new security group to a user. In this example, in the group name, I'll create a new security group for the staff security group. In the group description, I'll enter this security group only allows access to the files, contacts, workflows, and the request modules. Next, click Save. The security group details page will display. Each of the modules that you're going to create for the staff security group are listed on your screen with a set of privileges that you can grant. The first module is the calendar module. This module, if selected to view, would put the calendar module on the banner. As you can see, the contacts, the files, the request, routing, and systems, along with the workflow modules, are all listed. Security groups, the module privileges. View, which activates the module to appear on the iChannel banner. Change, add, and delete grants privileges to make changes within the module. Report allows the user to run reports against the module and the information within that module. The view privilege, if selected, would then populate these modules on the banner for the new staff security group. As the system IT manager, you would simply go through and select all of the privileges or grant the privileges that you would like for this new security group. As you can see, for the new staff security group, I'm only going to be granting out the modules that would allow the staff individuals to only view, change, add, and run reports against the modules for contacts, files, requests, and workflows. One small change that I'll make to the security group for the staff is I will allow the staff member to delete any requests that they have created. Your iChannel implementation team or support personnel can easily assist you when determining what permissions to grant out to the security groups at any time. Once you've created your privileges and assigned to the security group, next click Save. You have now created a new staff security groups. The next step in the process is to determine when setting up the security groups if you'll be setting up global file area permissions or using the template file area permissions. In this exercise, I'll begin first by determining that my iChannel setup will use only the global file area permissions. Remember, this grants file area privileges to view a site, view files, add documents, email files, and publish files. A global file area permission allows the security group to see all sites and files within a client file area. To begin setting up the global file area permissions, click the Global File Area Permissions link under the Administration navigation panel. The group permissions for the site screen will appear. Security groups may be granted the file management features below. Click the appropriate options and press any Save Permissions button to save the settings. As you can see on your screen, all security groups that have been created under the Security Groups feature will appear on the screen. Some security groups have global permission settings, and some do not. As you can see, the Employee Security Group that was created previously has global file area permissions set at this level of security. All blue check marks identify the granted permissions at the global level. In our exercise, we created a new staff security group, and we've determined that we will set the global file area permissions at this level. Now, the IT admin would come in and select or click a checkbox to grant a privilege within this security group. For the staff security group, allow them to view a site. They also can add documents. I'm not going to allow them to recategorize a file or give them permissions to the security group to make any changes. That's an IT feature instead. I'll allow them to also view the files. I'll let my security group create discussion notes if they would like to. File history seems like a good permission also. I do want to email files and allow my staffs to also email files to my clients, and I'd like to get email notifications about those files, so I'll check that. We used to have a feature where clients could check in and check out documents. That's not really needed anymore, as we have a new feature called Ifetch. Reach out to your support personnel to learn more about Ifetch, or visit the iChannel community support page to watch a quick video on Ifetch. Now, for my organization, we do allow files to be published to a client portal. Well, I'll need to grant out the ability to publish those files to the portal. I also have some of my staff who might work across different departments, and they might need to share a file every now and then when they co-work together on a client site. So that's called linking. I'll give them that feature also. Certainly would like to have my client receive emails that contain files from the firm representative, so I'll also grant out email files. I don't think I'll give out permissions. Again, that's an IT feature, and I'll probably leave that up just to my IT admin instead. It's not uncommon that one of my staff members might need to copy or transfer a file that might have gotten uploaded to the wrong site. So I'll allow them to copy and transfer that file, and also move that file if that ever happens. Files can be locked so no other staff member can make changes to a file. Maybe that's the final version of that file. So if you're going to allow files to be locked and unlocked, you might want to go ahead and grant out that privilege. Now, in my organization, my staff aren't allowed to delete files. They can put files in the recycle bin or mark for deletion, but I'd rather have one of their managers or maybe the IT individual to make the final determination about a file that should be deleted. And the same with about the deleted submitted button. So as you can see here, when I created my staff security group, the next step was to determine if I would set global file area permissions or if I would use the template file area permissions instead. In this exercise, I decided to set it up at the global level, and then I came to the staff security group and I identified all of the privileges I want to grant out to this staff group. Now remember, I've not assigned it to a user yet. That will be next. So let's go ahead and click Save. Now that you've created your security groups and you set up your global file permissions, the next step would be to assign it to an internal user. Now, from the Systems tab, I can click on the security groups in the Systems navigation panel. Do a quick query on the new group that I created. Select Query. You can see the new staff security group is in my search results. Now, from the security group details page, I have a members area where if I click the add button, I can select internal representatives or firm representatives who I'd like to assign this new staff security group to. Now, I can select one individual or I can select multiple individuals as needed. So you can select as many individuals from the member screen to assign the new staff security group. Once you select all the members, just click Save. Now remember, these new individuals that have been added to the new security group, they will adhere to the following modules permissions that were granted out, in addition to all of the permissions that were granted out in the global file area. As you can see, these were the permissions we granted to the global file area for this new security group. Now, you can also do a search to just locate an internal firm representative. Now, once you locate that internal representative, you can select their name. From their contact details page, just click on their subscriber record. And as you can see in the group membership for this firm representative, all of the security groups that have been created are selected. Since I already had set up this internal firm representative on my security groups detail page, the checkbox for this security group has already been selected. Whether I set it at the contact detail subscriber page or on the security group page, doesn't matter. They both do the same feature. So, security groups at the template file area. These are required. These types of security groups will grant file area privileges at the template level to view sites, view files, add documents, email files, and publish files, just to name a few. The template level security provides greater control at the site level on how security groups are applied in iChannel. Now, template file area permissions can be configured to override the global file area permissions when needed by the organization. Some of the advantages of a template level security are they allow the organization to use a standard set of security permissions on certain site types, like a client or a vendor or a prospect. When a new site is created based on the template, the site will automatically be assigned the security group settings within the template site permissions, whether those be at the global or the site permissions. Now, if an organization determines they want to set the security groups at the site permissions on the file template, then the site file area permissions are configured. Now, these grant a one-off of individual file area privileges at one site to view sites, view files, add documents, email files, publish files, just to name a few. The site file area permissions allows the organization to override the template and/or the global file area permissions. Let's take a moment to look at this in greater action. Now, in this scenario, my organization has made a business decision that any firm representatives that work in the audit department, they're not allowed to see any client or client files in the tax department. And if you happen to work in the tax department, well, my organization has made the decision that you're not allowed to be able to see any clients or files in the audit department. Well, how would we go about setting up the security groups at the template level to allow this business decision to be implemented? As you can see, I have a template underscore audit. Now, this template is used when creating any of my audit clients in my iChannel environment. I also have a template underscore tax. Now, this template is what I use to create any of my tax clients inside of iChannel. Now, my organization has made a decision that if you work in the audit department, you should only be allowed to see audit clients and the security groups that would be applied in the audit group. Now, but my tax clients, they're not allowed to see any audit clients that would be created using the template underscore audit. This scenario would restrict any firm representative that is in the tax security group from being able to access any audit client or looking at any of the files in my audit client's file management area. Now, on the template underscore tax, my organization made a decision that if you are a firm representative working in the tax department, you shouldn't be able to see any audit security groups or any audit clients or their files. But since you do work in tax, the business decision was that if you work in the tax security group, you should be allowed to be able to see all tax clients and the files associated with them. Now, let's do a show me real quick, and I'll show you how to set this up in iChannel and also grant out the file permissions for each template. Now, to do this show me, I'm going to return back to the Systems tab. In the filter dropdown for the search criteria under template, you'll see a list of all of the available templates that were created in my environment. It is worth noting that the template underscore audit and the template underscore tax, they've already been created. Now, to support the show me, we'll be accessing the template underscore audit and the template underscore tax to show you how to set up the security groups that support our exercise. Now, I'm going to return back to the search area and I'm going to do a search for my templates. You can see here, there's a list of a lot of templates that were created. I'll start first with my template underscore client. I'll access the file area. Now, as you can see, under the template underscore audit, this is the type of category structure that has been created. Now, this was done in advance by your iChannel implementation team, and it is highly recommended that you contact your implementation team or the iChannel support team to make any changes necessary to any category structure. Now, to set the site permissions that match our example that we're setting up today, let's click on the site permissions. It is worth noting this is an administrative granted permission, so make sure you have access to the Site Permissions button before ever making any changes. As you can see here under the group permissions for the template audit, here are my two security groups. If you remember, our exercise said that only the security groups that support the audit should be allowed to access any client that was created using the audit template. And when they do access those clients, we'll grant out at the site permission level the permissions to support. Now, in our audit security group, it is recommended always with you're setting up a file site permission at the template level, always override your global permissions because we're not going to use the global permissions anymore. We're only going to focus at the template level to set our security. Now, if an audit user at the firm was granted the rights to access an audit client, when they access that client in the audit department, what could they do? What permissions would we grant out? Well, we would go through and set all the necessary permissions. Now, these permissions look just like the global permissions, but now that we've overridden the global permissions, we're only going to use permissions at the template file site area. So we would grant out all of the permissions that we would like for any firm representative who works in the audit department to have. As you can see, I'm just going through and I'm selecting all the permissions that I would like for this user or any user who accesses an audit client to have. You can check or deselect any of the chat boxes as necessary. Now, it's important to remember that our tax group at the firm, they don't have access to the audit clients. So therefore, we're always going to override the permissions from the global setting just in case. And because the tax group has no access to the audit department, when we override the global permissions and then set no permissions, any firm representative in the tax group, they won't have access to even access the audit clients or to look at any client files in the site. Remember, always save your work. You'll get confirmation that your work has been set. Now that was the first exercise. If you remember, we need to also set permissions at the template level for our tax group. So I'll do a search again, and there's my template for my tax. Now, anytime a tax client is created inside iChannel, we need to set the permissions level. So again, we access the site permissions. Now, if you remember earlier under the audit group, we granted out permissions for the audit group and we restricted the tax group. Well, in this case, we'll do the opposite. We'll restrict the audit security group. They'll have no access to any tax clients or any tax files. But it is important that we override the global permissions for the tax group and at the template level, assign all of the necessary permissions that we would like for any firm representative that works on a tax group to have permission to. Now, once you've set up the permissions, go ahead and click Save. And you can click any save in any security group. The save is global for the template screen. Let's discuss all of the steps we've completed so far. The first thing we did is we created our security group. The first thing we did is create our security groups. Next, we created our security groups at the global file area permissions. Next, we created the security groups at the template file area and also created our security groups to support the site file area using a template. Now we got one last step left to do, and that's to create the security group at the folder file area permissions. Remember, this is optional. If you remember, we started off by setting the global site permissions by going to Systems, Reports, and then the global file area permissions. In the next exercise, we accessed a template and set the site permissions for the template. In the final exercise, we'll be setting up the folder file site permissions. Now remember, this allows an organization to be more granular in their security. You could have an organization that has made a business decision that says, although I've created a template for my tax users and they have access to all tax clients, I really don't want them to have access to any information that is filed or uploaded into the billing folder category. Now, billing in this case is a secondary category to the primary category of administration. While organizations can take advantage by setting folder permissions. When you click on the billing folder, a new icon will appear, which is called the topic folder security. Now, when clicking this icon, you will be setting up security or group permissions only at this category called billing. You'll see that the override global and site permissions, when checked, would make both the global or the site permissions become null and void, and only the permissions that you set at the folder would be active for any client where a security group has access to that client. Remember, each organization can make their own determination whether to set global site permissions or template file site permissions versus a folder permissions. As always, when setting up security, always reach out to your iChannel implementation team or your iChannel support team, as they'll be happy to consult and provide guidance when needing to create a security group and a security group with file area permissions. In this Let's Discuss, we had an opportunity to walk through all of the different types of security groups and the global file area permissions, the template file area permissions, the site file area permissions, and the folder file area permissions. Thank you for watching this iLearning video on how to set up and assign security groups